So, hello everyone. This is Ren Tojo. It's been quite a while since I've actually made a video reacting to someone on the internet, but I was just kind of bored and I'm dealing with a fucking cold right now. So, I decided that I wanted to make a video reacting to this left-wing person basically rationalize the Epstein files. So, as we're all well aware, the Epstein files have been released, and they have released and shown some absolutely fucking heinous shit that most right wingers and even people on the political fringes of the right believed in for about nigh on 10 years at this point. But, simultaneously, uh, apparently this guy is blaming right wingers for falling for a fucking psyop, which I mean that's kind of the pot calling the kettle black. But here, I'm gonna react to this video and I want to get your general opinion in the comment section. All right.
The other day, we got a massive batch of Epstein files, mind you, still not all of them. I can only imagine what the remaining files contain and why they're being withheld, but still, over 3 million documents dropped the other day. And some pretty wild information was uncovered, like Bill Gates contacting Epstein for STD medication, or Elon Musk practically begging Epstein to go on his island. Please, can I go on Little St. James? It's really fucking amazing. All that wealth and power, and he's still a desperate loser.
So already from the initial take from him hating Elon Musk, which is mainly a bipartisan position, you can already kind of tell that he's a tad bit of a liberal, but this doesn't really reveal his full hand yet. All right, you're gonna see what I'm talking about very soon.
Epstein meeting up with 4chan's founder, Moot, I believe his online pseudonym is. And that was right around the time the politics board on that shithole debuted. And that board was pretty much a breeding ground for this new wave of fascism that has this country in a chokehold. It gave way to Gamergate, which gave way to the anti-SJW movement, which gave way to online momentum for Trump's 2016 campaign. Because he was seen as the edgy, outsider, non-PC candidate.
So, the point that he's trying to perpetrate is he believes that since Poll was predominantly responsible for things like Gamergate and the anti-SJW movement in the early 2010s, basically, more or less, he thinks that effectively the right is not this organic thing, but rather a psyop basically created by Epstein on Poll. So he effectively had this idea in his head that basically Poll was effectively created as a psyop, whereas, I mean, it might have been created as a psyop, but the whole idea was basically it was gathering people of more of a grassroots persuasion. People already had these opinions. The idea that the right-wing conservative backlash towards the left in regards to anti-woke culture, anti-SJW culture, Gamergate, all that stuff. The idea that this stuff is completely manufactured and not completely organic in and of itself, in places like Poll were simply just outlets for these people to do this, is kind of a foolish notion. And also, I scoff at the idea that he might actually think that the left or the liberals are not the same when Epstein funded research into he's funded research into trans science. So he invested quite a fair deal of money into researching trans people, trans surgery, trans psychology, all this stuff. And he had a dedicated scientist working on this type of stuff, a dedicated biologist working on this stuff. And then shortly then after, you started seeing the proliferation of things like drag queen story time, where kids were literally being read sodomy textbooks, read by androgynous, sexually ambivalent, mentally ill people going around, children as young as 5 years old. So that's just the whole thing. Both the left and the right have been co-opted by Epstein. And more specifically, I would say the Jews by and large, but that's a bit too high level for most people to accept. But most of this stuff has been co-opted by Epstein and the Jews to effectively make the culture war that probably was going to happen more vivacious than it actually potentially would have became. Because these differences already existed in society, all right? To pretend like these differences never existed, where people had right-wing opinions about sexuality, firearms, men versus women, the men women dynamic, stuff like the red pill, like the idea that this stuff did not organically exist is a foolish notion. I would say I would go as further as to say that the left is more socially engineered than the right in regards to stuff like that. Because the trans shit is not fucking normal. That's just mental illness. All right? The gay shit, I mean, homosexuality was already pretty much normalized by the 2010s. Everybody fucking knows this. By the 2010s, it was pretty much already fucking normalized. Yeah, people still got called slurs for being homosexual, but like for the most part, societally, by and large, it was normalized. You know, you already had like gay marriage normalized and stuff like that. I mean, I would go as far as to say that the left is more socially engineered than the right in regard, if we're going to talk about social engineering and psyops and shit like that, because most, if not all, of the leftist dogma is basically it's just an abstraction to like the key founding blocks of a civilization, of a proper civilization, supporting family, and generally speaking, like I will agree with certain things in regards to like the left economically when it comes down to socialism, but the problem is that the left believes in socialism, but they also believe in equity politics. So like this guy is going to go on to say like, oh, the right wing basically, blames immigrants and marginalized people. They blame the blacks. They blame the immigrants. But like at the same time, it's not really it's not just billionaires. It's both. It's both immigrants, it's both the billionaires, because they brought the immigrants over here to undercut your wages so that they could make a better buck. That's about fucking it. And look at the 2008 financial crisis. Bill Clinton, I mean, even Epstein fucking knew this. Bill Clinton effectively caused the housing market, and I will agree with the guy. He kind of did. He kind of had, like, Epstein had kind of a point when he said, yeah, Bill Clinton did cause the financial crisis in 2008, because the fact that they forced people who were subprime, who were like these bankers, to give subprime mortgages to people who could not afford these homes and would not be able to realistically afford these homes. And the problem is that we're just pushing the envelope and we're just kicking the can down the road where people can't afford homes, and specifically people who are subprime. And the people who were subprime, for the majority of it, I do believe like 47% of them were African American and 58% of them were like Latino. So like a majority of the subprimers in 2006 were people of color. And for the most part, we gave all these subprime mortgages out to these people who defaulted on their mortgages, who couldn't pay them off, who foreclosed, and then they couldn't afford to pay the mortgages, and then the fucking banks failed because they lended too much money. And although they were insured by the government as per the protocol that Bill Clinton advised and put in place, that he was basically giving out Uncle Sam's credit, I mean, Epstein had a point. That was a genuine point. And in regards to stuff like job opportunity, illegal immigrants and immigrants themselves deprive people of entry-level positions. People complain about AI depriving people of entry-level positions, but like no one really understood how bad it was in the blue-collar working-class sector, more so than people who lived in areas where there was a high concentration of illegal immigration and legal immigration. Because at the end of the day, immigrants will work for less 100% of the time. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that an immigrant will work for less and basically try to produce the same as a native worker. But at the same time, like, we live in America, all right? We have to afford this expensive existence, and most of these immigrants that come here, they come here and they make money and they send it out of the country. So it's not even going back into the economy. It's like, what does it go towards? Fucking McDonald's when they go to like feed themselves, and then the other half of their paycheck basically goes to like their family in Guatemala who basically, lives in a fucking shithole favela. so like he claims that like the right wing blames marginalized individuals. But like simultaneously, these people, while you want to consider them marginalized, I just consider them to be people who are a part of a protected class. But like, yeah, let's call them marginalized for the sake of arguing with this fucking person. These people are a part of a protected class where if you say or do anything against these people, you could go to jail for anti-discrimination. But if you were white, it doesn't matter. All right, it literally doesn't fucking matter. Like a white civil rights case of discrimination literally doesn't exist in this country. It's never going to happen because people of color are a protected class in this country, as well as people like Jews who are also a protected class. So no, these people aren't fucking marginalized. They're a protected class. But I'm getting, besides myself, I'm rambling. Let's continue watching the video.
Always offending the liberal snowflakes. And it makes me feel, I guess, vindication to now know without a shadow of a doubt that what I've been saying for a while at this point is true. That this culture war shit that has plagued online political discourse and has seeped into real life political discourse is nothing more than a psyop concocted by billionaires to keep the working class at odds with each other. They prey upon people's already existing bigotries by creating bullshit stories like Haitian migrants eating cats and dogs in an Ohio town, or just in general making boogeymen out of marginalized groups these people are already bigoted against to make them feel validated in their hatred and exacerbated or radicalize people. And it's all to keep them from realizing that it's actually the billionaire class fucking this world up. And turns out it was also so people's focus would be shifted away from Epstein's horrific crimes.
Like, this guy is just completely fucking blind. Like, he doesn't even really... Because he's not working class, probably. That's the whole thing. This man is probably like a fucking somewhat, like, well-off kid of a well-off boomer. And, like, just based on his tone, he appears to be a homosexual. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why people on the left generally have that tone of voice, but, like, it's besides the point. The enemy of the working class will always be third world immigration. The enemy of a civil society will always be third world immigration. The enemy of wages will always be cheap labor that basically can fill a need, that being the greed of business owners. Because these people don't want to pay jack shit to have anything done, but yet still they think that they're qualified to have a business. If you can't pay your workers, you shouldn't have a business. But no, who's gonna pick the crops? Who's gonna pick the crop? Literal fucking slavery, 1860s slavery argument. This guy is not pro-American. He's not pro-working class. He's a fucking shill. This is why the left is more psyops than the right. Because there is literally actual dissidence on the right. The right has basically been pushing for people like Epstein to basically be exposed for all of their heinous fucking crimes for like over 10 fucking years. And this guy claims that the right wing is distracted from the crimes of Epstein. This guy genuinely might be developmentally challenged. Nobody on the left wing at all questioned any of the authority of the elites at all. And quite contrary, they actually supported the elites because of the fact that the elites themselves basically, in some cases, politically defended the left, basically, during the time periods. Like Bill Gates, for Christ's sakes. He was defending the fucking vaccines, the fucking surveillance state. And Bill Gates is literally a part of that old liberal establishment that existed in America for such a long time. Culturally left socialists will always, never astound me with their level of class consciousness being, completely, close to near zero. To be class conscious is to be anti-immigration because you understand what the apparatus and application of immigration is. To degrade your wages. But I don't expect this guy to understand any of that shit because he's not working class. This man is not a blue-collar worker. He's never worked in blue-collar. His hands have never gotten dirty. He is a low-grade, white-collar worker who basically works a fucking desk princess job, if he works at all. And this is why these, leftist, left-leaning socialist organizations are all just pathetic and make socialism look bad. And I'm not sure of whether this guy is like a socialist or just a plain up anarchist. But if he's an anarchist, then quite literally, I'm not sure this guy would last like 5 minutes in like an actual anarchy. He'd probably get fragged immediately, like upon like there being any sort of anarchy. Like these are the same type of retards that think that ICE is like basically just Israel, or like that they're affiliated with Israel. When anti-third world immigration policies of removing third worlders and sending them and deporting them back to their country is literally an anti-Israel virtue. Because the Jews and the billionaires that they fucking work with import these people not only just to degrade your wages, but also to disseminate and divide your fucking country. But let's continue with the retard's analysis.
And also the horrific crimes of people within his orbit. So congratulations to all you brave crusaders fighting in the culture war this past decade or so. You fell hook, line, and sinker for a psyop orchestrated by a pedophile billionaire, who is also Jewish to put that little cherry on top for all of the online Nazis.
Wasn't like the precursor of the modern left created by a bunch of revolutionary Marxist socialists from like the Frankfurt School who basically pushed this whole fucking idea of intersectional Marxism, who themselves were also affiliated with people who were basically predatory towards children. People like John Money, a sexologist who basically like fucked up the life of some kid who had a botched circumcision, turned him into a woman, and then that kid ended up killing himself later on. But like regardless of all of this shit, like the issue of Epstein is not a political issue. It's not a right versus left. It's elites in their interest versus the people of the nation. And quite frankly, most of the people who were affiliated with Epstein, including Epstein himself, were in favor of very liberal policies in America and a lot of leftist policies in America. So like it really doesn't basically make your case any better, because of the fact that most of the people who are on Epstein's island, if they were celebrities, they pushed basically either like apathy towards leftist policies being instituted in society, or were vehemently pro-leftist policies in society. Ultimately speaking, Epstein exists as a bipartisan disruptor to the political system, and he played both sides. It wasn't just he played the right and basically he used and amplified nativist sentiments against immigrants, against a certain group of ethnic people. It's like, it's not just that. He also, which, mind you, was already there to begin with, he also basically used the left as well and radicalized them as well by instituting this pro-trans stuff, taking advantage of the already pre-instituted leftist society that had been instituted effectively in the 60s with like the youth revolutions in America during that time period, which those groups for the most part were effectively created through Jewish Marxist psyops on society. Ultimately speaking, Epstein is more a vindication of like neo-Nazis abroad for their anti-Semitic beliefs, because of the fact that quite literally a Jewish multi-billionaire pedophile effectively blackmailed a bunch of people to consolidate his control on politics, entertainment, while also abusing children. Like, honestly, Epstein is more a victory for the right than the left, because it vindicates a lot of beliefs on the right. And so to claim that these people were effectively psyoped into believing shit that Epstein wanted you to believe is complete bullshit. No, Epstein co-opted a sentiment that was already here, that is a very honest sentiment to have, and basically he amplified it and he pitted it against a group of people who were also socially engineered to begin with, who had been socially engineered in the making all the way back to the 60s. All of these ideas had been implanted in the 60s until they eventually culminated in the liberal society in which we have right now, which is like an anti-family, anti-white, pro-degeneracy, pro-hedonism, bottomless fucking empty pit of a society. Just a completely hollowed out society where there's no morals. It's this individualistic, unpatriotic, consumer culture, just consume the new fucking thing, slop economy, where the prices keep going up and the wages keep on stagnating, but people will still import H-1B visas, applicants, and they'll basically let illegal immigrants have a pass and do whatever the fuck they want to do, regardless of what they're doing, whether they're undermining the working class and them getting opportunity and entry-level jobs in the areas in which they reside in. Honestly speaking, like, Epstein is the biggest victory for, like, anti-Semites that has ever existed in the modern era. Because, quite frankly, Epstein is the epitome of, like, what every online internet anti-Semite basically describes. A rich, narcissistic, self-absorbed, secular Jew who thinks of himself as superior and above most people because he's Jewish, who sexually abuses children and gets a bunch of degenerate sodomite goyim that were created from the degeneration of society during the 60s and onwards. He gets these people to abuse children so he can fucking blackmail them, and he can use his influence and power to basically extort them and get what he wants from them. Bottom line, this guy basically doesn't understand class consciousness. He's a complete fucking shill retard. And he's probably the reason why our democracy has failed us, aside from the fact that political interest and economic interest is controlled by a bunch of satanic pedophile elites. Well, that's all I have to say. This is Rentojo, and I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to make a fucking video again, but I just felt the need to make a video because I wanted to. Have a nice day.